Hello everyone, I'm Panos, and in this session we're going to be talking about cocktails. In this session we're going to be talking about the spirits that we use in cocktails and some of the families of the cocktails. We're going to see what we mean later on. And the importance of water and ice in our cocktails, because most of the times we tend to neglect how important is water or ice that we use inside our cocktails, okay, for the final product, for the product that reaches our guests. So, let's start with spirits. What do we have? Now, we're going to take it a little bit back in the day, as we said in the previous session, in the biggest boom of cocktail making was through the Prohibition time, okay, in USA. And why this happened? Because unfortunately, due to Prohibition, the majority of the alcohol was made by smuggling. Okay, people were making alcohol in their bathtubs, in their garages, in their basements. Therefore, the quality of the spirit was very, very poor. Okay, so the bartenders of the time, in case to cover that bad taste of the impurities of the spirit, then they started experimenting more and more with cocktails. They started creating more and more ways to cover the bad taste of the alcohol that they had back in the day. Okay, now because of that, what happened then? Some things were so popular, let's say, that they followed us up to today. Okay, some families of these cocktails were so popular that they continued, they stayed alive. All right. Now, let's see some of them. And what happened then, actually? Let's start with a fun fact. As we said, during Prohibition, in New York only, there was a type of bars called speakeasies. And before the Prohibition was about 30,000 bars in New York City. During Prohibition, that number increased to 100,000. So every little corner had a bar, okay? Because when something is legal, everybody wants it, right? So, and what happened then? All of a sudden, the Prohibition stopped. So all the underground bars, all the illegal bars came back to the surface. Now, because the Prohibition stopped, there was no such need for so many bars. Therefore, the majority of the bartenders back in the day, they just found themselves without a job. And what happened then? These bartenders, the majority of them, they moved to Europe and they brought the know-how of cocktail making in Europe. Okay, that's why this industry boomed in the 40s, 50s, and so on. Now, let's start with the spirits. Okay, we talked about spirits in previous session. Now, let's see how these spirits are used in cocktail making. Okay. One of the most used spirits from back then up until now that we're going to say it's still in fashion, because even when we talked about cocktail fashion, everything's a circle, okay? So right now, the industry is coming back to the classics. It's returning to the classics. The only thing is, the modern bartenders, the bartenders nowadays, they're giving a little bit twist. They're giving a little bit of themselves in the cocktail. Now, one of the most commonly used spirits, let's say, in cocktail making is bourbon and whiskey. These two, along with the brandies, were the most commonly used spirits for cocktails back in the day. Now, out of these, some beautiful classics came out, like an old-fashioned, a Manhattan, sours, which sours, it was so popular that it became a family. I'm going to explain later. So, back in the day, what happened? And don't get me wrong, it's still in fashion, okay? As I said before in another session, okay, when you're creating a cocktail, there's no right and wrong. There's no do's and don'ts. Anybody's asking you when you're making a creation, why you're doing this, the only correct answer is why not. There's no restrictions in cocktail making. There's nothing that can stop you to use another ingredient. There's no rules that say, no, you have to use only this. This doesn't exist. And whoever tells you that lives in the past. Be sure about that. There are some rules, yes, in cocktail making, but if we stick to the rules, we're never going to move forward. So when a person, for example, let me give you an example. I heard someone saying, nobody's touching old-fashioned. Let's say, nobody's touching old-fashioned. It should be with good old bourbon or good old rye whiskey. Has to be this type of bitters and it has to be this type of sugar made this way. No. No. Nothing can hold you back in cocktail making. Cocktail making, when you're creating a cocktail, you're giving a piece of yourself inside the drink. You're giving something as a sender that your receiver, which is your guest, is going to get a different experience every time. I said it all my life, and I'm going to say it again. Bartenders don't serve drinks. Bartenders serve experiences. Now, the experience that I want you, me, for example, the experience that I want me to give to you as a bartender is a different one than another bartender or another barmaid. So don't get caught between this rumor, let's say, or between this narrow-minded way of thinking. There's nothing wrong in cocktail making. Feel free to experiment. Some things work, some things don't. But you're never going to know it until you try them. It's simple as that. So, let's start it, and we'll see what I mean. Okay, an old-fashioned. What is an old-fashioned? It's very classic. We all love it. We all made it. Some of us made it better than others, but that's irrelevant. Still, an old-fashioned has inside. That's why I said before, feel free, because what I'm going to be saying now doesn't stay to the standard. It's not going to stay to what we know or what we always knew. There's no standards anymore. From now onwards, you don't have something standard in your bartending life. Just do it. So, an old-fashioned. What can I have inside? Let's start with the classic recipe. Okay? So the classic recipe was with bourbon. Actually, it was with rye whiskey in US. Bitters, and then a cube of brown sugar. That was it. Simple as that. Okay. Now some people tell me, if you use white sugar, is it wrong? No. If you use white sugar syrup, of course always proportional, or brown sugar syrup, is it wrong? No. Nothing is wrong. If I use this brand of bitters instead of this brand of bitters, is it wrong? No. Feel free to experiment. It's still an old-fashioned, but it's a twist. It's your twist to an old-fashioned, and it's fine. Everything is fine. And why I say I'm not going to stay to the, I'm going to say it again. We're not sticking here with the classic way. We're not. So, an old-fashioned, as I said, can be with bourbon. It can be with whiskey. It can be with aged rum. It can be with brandy. Why? Who said that we cannot make a brandy old-fashioned? It's a beautiful drink. Or who said that we cannot make a rum old-fashioned? Now, a rule that I would suggest, something, it's not even a rule, something that I would suggest, for example, if you make a rum old-fashioned, don't go for a white rum. Go for an aged rum. Go for a dark rum. Okay, so it has this earth element, has that wood inside that the old-fashioned needs. But there's no don'ts in cocktail making. Just feel free, and you're going to love it. And what comes to, even back in the day, everybody that is preaching nowadays that some things should never be touched, yeah, oh my God, that's why we're not still living in caves. Whoever says that, they don't realize that even back in the day, this rule didn't apply. Okay, and I have an example right here. Sours. A sour means what? Okay, a sour, I'm going to talk later about Manhattan. So, when we hear sour, it means 3 ingredients, 3 added ingredients. That is a sour. Okay, let's see them. First ingredient, we have lemon juice. Second, we have sugar. And third, we have egg white. These three ingredients indicate a sour. Okay. Now, back in the day, it started with whiskey. It did start as a whiskey sour. Okay, so they're using whiskey, they're using lemon juice, sugar in any form. I'm going to repeat that, in any form, and I'll explain later, and egg white. Okay, dry shake, this is still a rule, even though this was bended, and I'm going to talk about this later. And the main ingredient was whiskey. Now, as I said before, this was so popular. The crowd loved it so much that sour, instead of a cocktail, it became a family. What do I mean by that? These three ingredients indicate a sour. Okay, great. We all agree on that. Now, the main ingredient varies. That's why we have a whiskey sour, we have a rum sour, we have an amaretto sour, we have a gin sour. So whoever tells you that, now that I'm going a bit back, that nobody should touch an old-fashioned, don't even listen. Even back in the day, they were bending these rules. Even back in the day, they weren't doing just old-fashioned with one. It became a family because it was popular. So feel free to experiment with everything. There's nothing wrong about twisting something. That's where your creativity comes. That's what this tells us. And this is beautiful. And don't think that this is the only way you have to stick with it. If you use lime juice instead of lemon juice, it's fine. Instead of using crystal sugar, you use sugar syrup or brown or white, it's fine. Now, instead of egg white, it used to be fresh egg white. Okay? Nowadays, some premises, they don't want to use fresh egg white. So they have albumin, which albumin, it's powdered egg white, okay, and pasteurized. They use it. It's still a sour. So feel free to experiment with it. That's why we're doing spirits in the cocktails. One thing, what spirits you're going to use in which cocktail is your choice, and your choice only. Feel free to experiment. Feel free to bend the rules. It's fine. Maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not going to work. As I said before, there are no bad cocktails. There are no bad cocktails. There are just different palates. Simple as that. I like very bitter and very spicy cocktails. It doesn't mean that a cocktail that someone else does, that it's sweet, is not good because I don't like it. It's just not my palate. Simple. So, let's go back. Bourbon and whiskey. Now, a Manhattan, because before we talked for a Manhattan, which was what? It was bourbon, let's say, all right, sweet vermouth, bitters, and sometimes, depends, a dash of sugar, sometimes. So, the only difference between an old-fashioned and Manhattan, ideally, it's the red vermouth. That's it. So many cocktails, if you change just one ingredient, you have a totally different cocktail. Okay. Now, if you're creating, let's say, a Manhattan, let's stay with the three basic ingredients, which is bourbon, red vermouth, and bitters. Okay. If instead of red vermouth, which is a strengthened wine, okay, a vermouth, if you want to use red wine instead, if you want to use red wine, a little bit of sugar. No, you cannot call it a Manhattan, but it is a twist in Manhattan. And it's fine to play around. It's fine to experiment with things. If not, how would you know? Every single cocktail made today, the inspiration behind it is from something of the past. Everything. Even the gimlets, for example, which is gin. It started with cucumber, then some played with other fruits inside. That's why when we have daiquiris, daiquiri is the easiest cocktail on the planet because there's 3 ingredients. Let's see other cocktails in general. Daiquiri. It's the easiest cocktail because it's just 3 ingredients. Lime juice, sugar, nowadays even syrup, and rum. Simple. It's the simplest cocktail. 3 ingredients only. Now, when things moved on, okay, the daiquiris, they became more famous or more appealing to the public when they started mingling with fruits. Everybody enjoyed the strawberry daiquiri. Everybody enjoyed in our lives banana daiquiri and anything. They just added a fruit inside. That was it. Daiquiri, the classic daiquiri is shaken. Nowadays, some people, they make it blended in a blender. So it comes out frozen like a slushy. Is it wrong? No. It's the evolution of things. That's why I'm doing all this here. The margaritas. Margarita was shaken, okay? Simple. Tequila, triple sec, which is orange liquor, and lemon juice. That's it. Some people add a dash of sugar. Is it wrong? Some people say, yes, it's very wrong. No, it's not. What if your lemon juice is too sour? We don't have always the power over the fruits that we have in our bar. Sometimes the fruit is very sour. Yes. Why we cannot put a dash of sugar to bring it down a bit? Everything is fine. Even the margaritas, it became a family. A strawberry margarita, a peach margarita. They started coming frozen as well, just like a daiquiri. Nothing is wrong. The only thing that is right in cocktails is what you like or what your guests like. That's it. Some people say, and probably I shouldn't say that, but I will. Some people say something should be touched, something is a very premium whiskey with Coca-Cola and no, sorry. Something shouldn't be, or I should say that, but I will anyway. Most of the people say, oh, nobody should enjoy a premium whiskey with a mixer because it's ruining the whiskey. Okay, I agree, maybe they're ruining the whiskey. But what if they like it like this? Why not? There's no do's and don'ts. Okay, if someone like his or hers very premium, extremely premium whiskey with a mixer inside, we're not to judge. Of course, we're there to educate, let's say in a polite way. Like, for example, you would say, I would strongly recommend this, you enjoy it neat. So you can understand the barrel, so you can understand what happened to the distillery, so you can find these aromas of vanilla inside your whiskey and this and this and this and that. That's beautiful. But at the end of the day, if the guest doesn't want, because some bartenders nowadays they take it a little bit too far, unfortunately. They don't see it as an interaction or as a way to educate someone. They start preaching, which is wrong. Everybody's going to a bar. People are going to bars for 2 reasons. 2 reasons only. Either they had a bad day and they want to fix it, either they had a good day and they want to continue it. Simple as that. There's these 2 reasons. At no case, no matter how good we are, or no matter how popular we are, or no matter how superstar a bartender could be, we have no right to say to someone, to preach to someone, how he or she is going to enjoy the drink. We're not in the position. We're there to serve. We're there to make someone's night beautiful. And that should be our aim. We shouldn't get caught between I'm a mixologist. No. You're a mixologist before your shift. During your shift, you're a bartender. And you're there to tend your bar. You're there to take care of your guests only. So don't preach to your guests. Just try to educate them, if they allow you. So, let's see some of the classic cocktails, okay? We're gonna see 5 of them, just 5. First one, mojito. And we're gonna see the myths behind it. I'm gonna show you in these cocktails my way. I'm gonna show you in these cocktails how I do them. Now, some of you are gonna like it, some of you don't, but as we said, there's no do's and don'ts. Now, in mojito, the ingredients are rum, soda, lime. I'm gonna put here juice, and I explain why, and sugar, and of course, our mint. Okay, these are the ingredients in mojito. Now, again, there's no do's and don'ts. I'm going to tell you the way that I learned to make a mojito. Okay, as I was taught back in the day, it was a mojito that was called Cubano. Okay, now what is the difference from the standard European version that we all saw around? Let's take it one by one. Rum. Usually bartenders are using white rum. I don't. I use blonde rum. Blonde rum is in the middle. Okay, it's not white, it's not dark. It's a bit yellowish. Okay, because I think that that rum gives the best out of a mojito. Soda is just a splash, not half and half, as I said in many places. Okay, and since we said in the beginning that we're going to talk about ice as well and water, okay, we're going to be explaining what type of ice we're using in each and every of these cocktails, so you get into this motion. Good. Lime. Now, the majority of people, when they're doing a mojito, usually they have lime wedges and they muddle them with this tool, as we said, inside the glass. Now, for me that is a no. Okay. Again, but as I said before, there's no do's and don'ts, so if you like to do it that way, feel free to do it that way. Me, I'm using lime juice. Why? Because when you're muddling something, I don't want the bitterness of the zest inside my cocktail. I want the bitterness of the zest inside the caipirinha, which is a different cocktail, but not inside a mojito. Okay, that's why I'm using lime juice. Sugar. Sugar, I'm going to tell you a thing that I believe is most common in Europe. Now, everybody's using brown crystal sugar in the mojito and then muddle it with the lime. Now, me personally, I'm using sugar syrup. Okay, let me write it down. And not even brown sugar syrup, I use white sugar syrup. I'll tell you why. Because in Cuba, very rarely you're gonna see someone using brown sugar, which Cuba is the country that mojito was invented, let's say. Almost nobody using brown sugar because it's too expensive. Okay, so when I'm using white sugar in a mojito, someone comes and tells me, this is not as a mojito should be. Please. And why I'm using syrup? I'm using white sugar syrup. Why? Because I don't like my guests to chew. Because sometimes when there's residues of sugar inside your drink, you end up chewing the sugar. I don't like that. Okay, so rum, soda, lime juice, sugar syrup, mint, depending on your mint, about 8 to 10 leaves. Just slap them just to wake them up. Okay, you just slap them in to wake them up, and then you put it inside the drink. And ice. Everywhere is used crushed ice in a mojito. I disagree. I strongly disagree. Why? Is it wrong? No. It's a choice, as I said before. But I disagree. Why? Because with crushed ice, a mojito is watering down way too fast. Okay, after 5 minutes, it's very, very watery. And to me personally, I don't like this in my cocktails. So I would suggest our ice to be in cubes. Okay. This is about the mojito. Of course, now flavored mojitos are very common. Flavored mojitos are very in fashion. So the strawberry and mango, you just use a bit of your puree and you have a flavored mojito. Feel free, experiment with it, play. Next one, margarita. I'm sorry, I know my handwriting is horrible, but you get the point. We have, what ingredients we have here? Tequila. Triple sec. Lemon juice. Or lime. Nothing is wrong. And optional, a bit of sugar. I'm going to say again, why a bit of sugar optional? Because never, even if we're buying from the same supplier our lemons for 10 years, every week maybe the lemons are different. Every season the lemons that are produced somewhere are different, and many of the products are imported or it comes from a different supplier or whatever. And always try your fruit and veg before you use them. Okay, so if something is very sour, if your juice is very, very sour because of the particular lemons, feel free to add some sugar, just a bit, okay, to balance it out. Balance is everything in cocktails. So, simple, is a shaking cocktail, made to our shaker. When you're preparing drinks in this type of shaker, either a Boston, either a tin to tin like this, always your eyes goes to the big container, especially as a beginner, and your spirit goes to the small container. Why we do that? Because if I have this full with ice and then I start pouring my ingredients here, I already have dilution. And we don't want that. So we put here our ice, we put here our liquors, our spirits, our ingredients, and then put them in, we close it, we shake vigorously, and then we open, and we double strain inside our glass. Now, tequila you can use whatever you want. Some people make it with white tequila, some people with yellow. It's fine, with gold tequila. It's fine, everything is fine. Triple sec, any brand you want. Lemon juice or lime, it depends what you want to give. It depends what type of margarita you want to do. If you don't want to make a super acidic margarita, maybe you want to use lime. And as we said again, optional sugar. Okay, that is a margarita. Very easy. Usually in the rim of margarita, we put a little bit of salt. Okay, don't overdo it. And as we said, this is shaken, but in new era, some people, they make the margarita in a blender. They make it frozen. Okay, in that case, do not put salt in the rim because it's slushy. Your guest is going to drink it with a straw. So they're never going to taste the salt. Okay, play with another garnish. Next cocktail. Let's say another one that is very popular nowadays, which is a Negroni. Now Negroni is very simple. Most of the times it's stirred in our mixing glass by using a bar spoon. What is now a Negroni? What's inside a Negroni? We have three things. Gin, a bitter, Campari is one of them, and sweet red vermouth. Different types of gin, because nowadays the gins are the variety of the spirits that we have in our arsenal to use to create a cocktail is massive. Okay, there are many types of sweet vermouth, many types of bitter spirits, many types of gin. Play around. Everything in equal parts. Okay. 1 part gin, 1 part bitter, 1 part sweet red vermouth. Now, parts is not a measure. Okay, saying a part, but either you do it in a small glass, either you do it in a bucket. Use 1 part of each. Okay. Now, as we said, everything varies. There are many types of gin, many types of bitter spirits, and many types of sweet red vermouths. Experiment, play around. Maybe a spicy gin or maybe a more citrusy gin makes your type of Negroni better. Feel free. There's no do's and don'ts again. There's not a standard brand that you have to use. There's not a standard aroma that your Negroni needs to have. You can be yourself on it. Play around. Feel free. Okay, and when you come with your best recipe, then introduce it to your guests. Okay, fantastic. Now, if we change one ingredient on this, that's why we say that bartenders throughout the time, they always played around. If we change one sole ingredient, and instead of our gin, we use a whiskey, exactly the same, everything. Any type of whiskey you want, any type of bitter you want, any type of sweet vermouth you want. All of a sudden, our Negroni changes name. It's not a Negroni anymore. Instead, it's a Boulevardier. See? We're just changing one ingredient. And by changing one ingredient, we're changing our cocktail. It's another classic, all of a sudden. Okay? The same principle here as well. If you're making your Boulevardier, any type of whiskey, any type of bitter, any type of sweet vermouth, whatever suits you. Okay? Excellent. Cosmo. Of course, I'm referring to a cosmopolitan. Okay? What are the ingredients? Vodka, lime juice, triple sec, cranberry juice, of course. Okay, very easy, very refreshing. Everybody loves a good cosmopolitan. 4 ingredients again. As we see, all our cocktails that we're seeing right now, they have not more than 4 ingredients. Vodka, lime juice, triple sec, any type. Vodka, any type. And then cranberry juice. Okay? That's it. Because one time I've been into a bar and a friend asked for a cosmopolitan, and the bartender asked her, with what type of tequila would you like a cosmopolitan, ma'am? So, okay, this is cosmopolitan. And last one is a martini. Now, what is a martini? A martini is 2 ingredients. Gin and dry vermouth. That's it, gin and dry vermouth. Now, we all seen a particular movie. It says dry martini, extra dry, shaken, not stirred. Why would you say that? Shaken, not stirred. Why someone would say that about a martini? You can do it in any way you want. Either you can shake it, either you can stir it. The only thing that is changing is the dilution. Because when you're shaking something, you chill it much, much faster. Okay. Therefore, because of the movement inside the shaker, you have bigger dilution, let's say, in a shaker that you have in a stirring glass, in a mixing glass, excuse me. Okay. Now, what is a dry martini? There is a martini, a dry martini, and an extra dry. Okay, 3 types, let's say. Martini, dry martini, and extra dry. You're gonna have, I guess, once in a while, there's gonna be an extra dry martini. Okay. So the difference between those is how much vermouth is inside. That's what defines a martini, a dry martini, or an extra dry martini. Now, what is happening there? The more dry you go, the less dry vermouth you use. So, if you do a martini, let's say you use 4 parts gin, 1 part dry vermouth, approximately. If you're going for an extra dry martini, what are you doing? Well, what are you going to do in that case? Imagine you have your mixing glass. You have ice inside. Then you put some dry vermouth inside, you stir it, and then you discard it, but you keep the ice. So what did you do? You just aromatized your ice. And then you put your good 5 portions of gin, and then you stir it again. Okay. The more dry a martini is, the less vermouth it has inside. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, apart from gin, what other martini is very fashionable today? Vodka martini. It's exactly the same principle. You can have a vodka martini, a dry vodka martini, an extra dry vodka martini. It's The thing is the vermouth. And I'm going to write it down so you keep it in your mind. Okay? The more dry a martini is, the less dry vermouth we use. Keep this in mind. Now, what we will say, because this takes us to the next part that I want to talk today, that's it can be shaken, it can be stirred. What's the only difference inside? The dilution. Okay, that takes us to water. How important is water to our cocktail making? Let me say it simply. I'm in this industry of 17, 18 years now. There's nothing more important than water in your cocktails. Water is the most important thing in your cocktails. Some of your cocktails, you need to water them down, if need be. Ice that you're using. What type of ice are you using? Because there's blocks of ice, there's clear ice, there's ice cubes that we buy, there's ice cubes that we make. Some cocktails are served with ice, some cocktails are not served with ice. Everybody takes that naturally, that comes naturally, to serve something with ice or not ice. If you create one of your own creations, as we said in the other session, and you keep to a simple principle, then you're going to have to choose, to decide if you're going to serve your cocktail with ice or without. Or you're going to have to decide if you're going to stir your cocktail or if you're going to shake it. Why? Because there's a difference in dilution. Because water is playing such an important part in your cocktail that from A to Z is present, or it's not, because it doesn't need to be. It's exactly the same. So, this and this are the most important things inside your cocktail, because because of those two, you decide how you're going to make your cocktail and decide how you're going to serve your cocktail. So, water-ice is the most important thing in cocktail making. And it became, the last years, it became a vast industry started behind it. Companies are producing blocks of clear ice that they're providing to bars. Or companies, they're making ice cubes or cocktail ice, which is crushed ice. Or it became massive. And I agree with it because it's very, very important. Not only for the preparation, but for the final product itself. Okay, pay very, very good attention to this. That was today's session. I hope you liked it as much as I did. My name is Panos, and I'll see you to the next one.